Hey everyone again, Tyler with Massage AME. And this video, I actually put up a whole montage of pictures I've taken over the years living here in the valley, Phoenix, Arizona, all the suburbs around it. And another pouring out of my heart because I was thinking about this wonderful state that I live in and the great city of Phoenix. Sometimes when I'm just driving around, taking a walk, whatever it may be, just looking out the window, I can't help but just thinking just how great this city really is. And I know people like to complain about, well, it gets so hot during the summer, or they complain about the desert landscape or what have you. But there's so much more to it than that. And I'm just recalling what happened over the last 20 to 30 years. There's been a lot of changes. It's dizzying sometimes to think about how much has really changed. I actually got into the city here. We moved here when I was just a boy, really. It was 97, 98, something like that. And I have to say, life back then, very different than what we have now. And that goes without saying. I understand that. But I just recall um, there wasn't all these buildings that had developed yet. Not all these residential subdivisions or commercial plazas. There was a lot more lakes. There was a lot more farming going on still. I used to love in the morning, being when we go to school and all that, we would drive by some of these lakes and we would see the herons hanging out or the egrets, those kinds of birds. And I was taking note how I don't really see them around anymore. That's because we've built so much that all those birds, they just don't hang out around here anymore. It's really sad to see that happen. Also, the farming communities, there was the dairy farms. There's maybe like one or two holdouts I can think of that still exist, but those were more prevalent during that time. In fact, the elementary school that I went to, we were right next to a dairy farm, and I have a funny story about that. Um, Sometimes you wonder, like, the things in your childhood, like how much they may have affected you if they did at all. But I recall that there was a pipe of some kind, and I think it was where they let out all the refuse. It was right next to our school, and sometimes in the morning we would watch the pipe drain into this pit, and it was just all kinds of nastiness, oozing sludge. Uh, like I said, it was refuse product, so it could have been, whatever the waste product was of the cows. It could have been mud, combination of all those things, unwanted food, you name it. But just I recall the smell. Just it wasn't just the sight; it was the smell. It's really the smell. I think more than anything else that gets to you. At least that's just what I've come to realize about um, whenever I see grotesque things. If I smell it, that's really what gets to me. Speaking of which, if you never witnessed a butchering before, there's an experience you'll never forget. But again, it was the smell. In fact, it was in Wilcox that I was in at the time. My grandparents lived there, and um, I went to go see how it was done. How what they'd take the bull in, what they would do, they would um how they would execute the bull for lack of better words, and then they would hang it up to dress the animal, and so the meat would be ready to be shipped off. Also, before witnessing all of that process there, I was taken to see the pit where they throw everything into it that's, unwanted or unusable material, all the animal bits. and you see the carrion, the birds that are scavengers flying overhead. But yeah, it was that smell wafting up from that pit. It's like the Valley of Gehenna, if you get my meaning. It was really quite a sight. And but at any rate, that's how long I've been in Arizona. I mentioned going to Wilcox too and seeing that. I was actually born in Arizona. I hail from Tucson originally. But when I ended up here, again, I talked about things I used to see. In fact, there were still dirt roads. We would watch the shepherds. They would actually guide their sheep across the dirt roads. You had to stop for them. There was stretches of alfalfa fields, corn, cotton. All those things were still around. The orange groves, they still exist. They're not as prevalent as they used to be, but they're still around. You can still go up into the northern parts of Mesa. There's orchards. Um, but yeah, there was just like I said, a lot more of that back then. Sometimes we my friends and I who've lived here a long time, we will sometimes refer to it as the sacred grounds. The things that we used to see and places that we would go that are just no longer there. You know, uh, the further east you went out into Mesa, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. It was like no man's land. Um, so when we saw all these things being built, in fact, the freeway, the 202, that connects many parts of the valley now, most of the east side, that is, I remember it being built. I was there when it first opened up, and that's how far back I go. And people move here. I tell them about this. It's hard for them to picture it. That they used to let us. Well, I shouldn't say they used to let us. It was just for a day, really. They let us all walk on the freeway during its grand opening. Everyone had a chance to come see it, to witness this event. And there was still some small town vibes that a lot of the areas had. I was in Chandler when we moved here, but you'd go to Gilbert, you'd go to Mesa. Like I said, small town vibes. It was still very Wild West, and in some ways, I would even dare say we still are, but even more so back then. And as you know, the state of Arizona has always been a little more of a conservative holdout. And I don't want to get into politics because that's not what this video is about. It's not what this is for. Um, but I have noticed that things are changing quite a bit, and I don't know if it's for the better. And never mind. It is the buildings. Yes, it's true. It is the number of people that are moving here, and that's why there is a lot of development going on around here. It's true that a lot of businesses and corporations have moved into this area. I mean, I get it. Hey, the real estate here is great. There's less natural disasters you have to worry about, apart from the extreme temperatures that we get during the summertime. But yeah, you kind of get used to it to some degree. Um, I also understand. I think there was just some tax um, breaks that people got here that they liked, and that's why they moved here as well. But I have noticed that there is a mindset that is developing here. It's changing a lot. Um, Apart from all the physical aspects, like I just mentioned, there really is a cultural shift as well. It's a whole different mindset that's occurring here. As I said, for many many years, Arizona had always kind of been a conservative stronghold, and it's becoming a lot more left leaning, a lot more liberal, and a lot of that has to do with just people from the outside moving in. Many of them came from California. We have many that came from Chicago, many that came from New York, and they just have a different worldview, different perspective on things. But again, I don't know if it's all for the better. I really don't. I kind of miss what my city used to be like. I liked the simplicity. I liked the small town feels. I liked the it was this feeling of you felt rule, but not isolated from urban living, if you can imagine what I'm getting at here. You weren't too far from being able to go into the city to uh, do whatever it is you want and get some sense of, you know, interaction, society, and all that. But other than that, you could go back to your home, your plot of land, or into your subdivision. But again, it was a lot more contained. There was still a lot of open, wide fields around you. And that's something else a lot of people say, by the way, when they come here, is they notice all the mountains around them. Um, it's just unusual to see that, I guess, where a lot of these people come from is the view of the mountains, because we're in a valley, so there's a lot more to see around you in that regard. Um, what else could I tell you about this? It's just, well, the East Valley mostly, I would say, has experienced a lot of change. Um, the West Valley has too. There's a lot of growth out there, but I would say more or less the West Valley has remained somewhat similar. Um, the, there's still a lot of there are some fields out there where they grow crop farms, is what I meant to say. Um, but as far as like all these different plazas with several different businesses and amenities and things to do and all that, the West Valley hasn't really caught up all that much, and a lot of people around here will say that the West Valley is still kind of dry, kind of boring, and I don't mean that to put anybody down. It's just how it is out that way. But that could probably change within the next 20 to 30 years also. So we'll wait and see. I mean, there's a lot of venues out there for entertainment purposes if you want to go see a show, concerts and what have you. That all is true. But I've been all the way out to Buckeye, and there still is, it still has that feeling out there of being somewhat detached from the city. But if you want to get into the east side of the valley, to where all the fun stuff is at, if you want to put it that way, it's it can be anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour worth of a drive going into town, and then going back as well. It's another 40 minutes to an hour. But yeah, I'm just commenting on just how things are. They are definitely changing. And I sometimes drive down one of the old streets around here. It's called Main Street. You get to really see a lot of the historical value that this state has, and a lot of things that are still there that are from another time, something that has long gone. I've always kind of referred to Main Street as the Route 66 of Arizona. And for those of you who live here, understand what that means. There's a lot to have a history to see there, but also a lot of things that have been abandoned and forsaken. Um, but it is reminiscent of another time. It really is. You almost feel like you went back to like the 1950s, 1960s era, at least in my mind, in some regard. So I will actually show you guys some of that eventually, some of the Main Street sites to see, because if it really if you're an urban explorer, it would be something that would really intrigue you, I think. But I'm not a person who likes to go trespassing, so sorry, I'm not gonna go risking that. I will give you guys some views of some of the stuff that's out there, but a lot of this stuff is private property, so you do have to keep that in mind, okay? If you ever want to come out and see this stuff. And Arizona as a whole, though, still has a lot to offer. It's more than just desert, as they say. Like the cacti and the brown and all that. There's still so much more to it than that. There's also the high desert. We have a lot of trees up north. It gets much colder up there. Um, and if you go down to Sierra Vista, the southeast part of Arizona, it's a completely different climate, different vibe, especially after the monsoon season. There's a lot of reptiles that come out around that time. If you're into herping, it's almost like tropical in a way. It's really is quite magnificent. I'm in love with this state and with this city, and I always will be. And will I ever move away from here? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I have a really hard time detaching myself from this. But I do have to ask, what is going on here? Are all these changes that we're experiencing, is it for the better? Again, I'm not so sure. I know that's just the way the world is. Things change. So, I'm not trying to hold on to the past per se, but I kind of miss it. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks this way about this great city of ours here. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I know a lot of people who have talked to us will tell you the same thing, but, you know, feel free to comment on that if you wish. So, what else can I say about it? I guess I'm just being a little sentimental. That's really it. Just missing some previous times. There's still some holdouts here and there. Like I said, there's some farms, I guess, but it's becoming like a relic in a way. It's almost like something you would expect to see in a museum in a photo somewhere, you know? But that's just the way it is. Um, a lot of retirement communities still out this way. I've noticed that although there are a lot more um, housing developments and what have you, there still are a lot of like really old communities that are like 55 plus, what they call retirement communities, perhaps, or active adult living, whatever it is, park communities, that kind of thing. And you start heading further east though into Apache Junction. That's that has been almost left untouched for the most part. There still is a lot of that small town feel out there. Queen Creek though, oh my goodness. People used to go out there because it was affordable to get a house. It's not anymore. And that's another thing. The housing market is just insane out here. You know, people who have lived here a long time, we're all saying the same thing. It's like, how does anybody get a house? What's more, how does anybody afford to live here? The price of everything has gone up. It's just insane. The cost of living. Where does this end? I don't know. I have no idea how this turns out. Your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, they had to actually make a boundary between Queen Creek and Santan Valley. Santan Valley wasn't even really a thing until recently, but there was so much growth out that way that they actually had to create two distinct towns or cities. It's we have Queen Creek and now we have Santan Valley. I think it has something to do with county borders. There's Maricopa County and then there's Pinal County. But that again, that's just how much things have grown and changed over the years. It's just it's mind-boggling. Like I said earlier, it's dizzying to think about this. Just how quickly the transition has been over the last 20 to 30 years. You know the old saying, you can never go home? That's what they say, right? Well, it's true. You can never go home. You can't stop what's coming. There's no waiting on you. That's Vanity, for those of you who know what that movie is. No Country for Old Men. It's a good one. Good book, too. Cormac McCarthy. I hope I can be that old and still have a mind like that someday. Oh my goodness, what a mind. I have just a knack for storytelling. The guy can capture details there in his writings. He's really something. One of my favorite authors. But yes, I think as of just, it was either earlier this year or sometime last year. I can't remember for certain. It may have been back in the year 23 or 22, maybe. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The town of Queen Creek had to open up their first police precinct. Again, that's how much they have grown. So I keep hearing all these rumors and talks now of how they want to connect the city more, not just the valley. They actually want to try to connect, Tucson and other parts as well. They want to make railways, bullet trains and things like that to try to accelerate travel time between cities and all that, make it more accessible. Will it all be accomplished within my lifetime? I have no idea. Will they make subways? I mean, it could happen. I don't know. We'll see. But that's just the way it is, right? Things just change. That's just the way it is. And on one hand, it's exciting. I don't want you guys to think, I don't know how to enjoy the things that are around us now. I do. I marvel at it, and I think it's wonderful and amazing. I really do. But at the same time, I can't help but feel forlorn and a sense of loss in some ways. But if you dwell on that too much, you can really become a depressed person, and it can cause you to freeze. And next thing you know, you're stuck living in your mother's house until she passes on, and then what do you do with yourself? You gotta learn to adapt to the ever changing times. That's just the way it is. You have to adapt to it. Sometimes you have to go into it kicking and screaming, but like I said, you can't stop what's coming. Anyway, let's try and end on a more positive note here. If you saw on some of these photos, yeah, snow has been known to happen here in the valley occasionally. It's not a common occurrence, but it does happen occasionally. And hopefully, when you were looking at these photos, you got to see some of the beauty that exists here in this wonderful state, in this lovable city. It has so much to offer. So, with that being said, thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, do all that business. I really do appreciate it. Take care, guys, until the next video.